Hello, this is Denton Yoder, the instructor for BSE 2304, the Biological Systems Engineering CAD class. This exercise is going to be just a continuation on the Lab 11 LISP. There's really no end to the customization you might want to do. One of the things that I don't like about AutoCAD is I think their arrow command is really bad. What they have is called a leader, 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 and you pick where it starts, you pick where the text should go, enter for annotation, and you type your text in A, B, C, enter, one more enter. Now the place I picked for the second pick is actually the end of the little tail line. It's not where the bend line is, and it put the text in. That's all great, but what if I just wanted an arrow? If leader's what you want, it's there, but what I really wanted was just an arrow. So one of the things I did years ago was made a little Lisp routine called arrow. Now, one of the things we had not talked about is parameters after a command name. If you do a command name C colon and the command name, and in the brackets you put a slash, which means all of these are going to be local variables that you can dispose of from memory when the program is over. So variables I used, 0.1, 0.2, old snap, arrow length, they can all be in there. Another one I might add is old ortho. Okay, so when I draw an arrow, I like to do the arrow, well, maybe I shouldn't do old ortho. I was going to say when I'm doing a leader, I like ortho off, and then I like it on to do the leg, but I'll worry about that later. Okay, just the arrow command. 0.1, 0.2, pick where the point location is, pick the next point, which would be 0.2. In my get point, if I add 0.1 in the get point command, it'll string the line from 0.1 to show where your first pick was. Programmatically, I'm reading what the user had their object snap modes set to, and then I'm changing them to 0 to turn off any snaps because they have already picked where the points are. Now, when they do a arrow, there's a setting in your dimension variables called dim ASZ, dim arrow size. And another setting is called dim scale. So the scale of your drawing is what you set dim scale to, which is a multiplier for all of the other dimensional variables like dim ASZ. So the arrow length is going to be a multiplication of your scale times the preset arrow size. Now, the way to draw an arrow real easily is a polyline command. The PL for polyline command will start a polyline, and if I type in W for width, it'll say what is the starting width. I'm going to leave it at 0. What is the ending width? And I can specify some width. And now it is dragging an arrow. Now it will stay that width and keep drawing unless I set the width back to 0. So I got to do width 0, 0 to get it back to a 0 width. And so basically a polyline command will draw an arrow. I'm going to erase that. Let's look back at the program. Command, P-line, starting at 0.1, starting with a width of 0, transitioning width will be the arrowhead length divided by 3. That's the default for the arrowhead size in AutoCAD. Then it's going to do the polar command, which the polar command is going to set a point based from 0.1 at the angle, going from angle from 0.1 to 0.2 for the arrowhead length. So that point is going to be the back side of the arrowhead. right here with polar. Then setting the width to 0, 0, and you have the arrowhead drawn with just that one command. Then I added a while loop that said while 0.2 is not nothing. So while you keep picking points, command P2, which means it's in the middle of the polyline command. Doing a command P2 is going to just pick the next point. Then it's going to ask you what the next point is, and it's going to store that as P2 to keep that loop going until you hit enter to skip entering points, and the computer will actually hit command enter to kick out of the polyline command, and then turn the object snaps back on again. The print C at the bottom you'll see in a lot of programs. Basically, it makes the program return a value of I did something, I printed something, although it's not really printing anything. It's kind of a placeholder to keep a nil message from popping up. Okay, so if I load arrow, I can now arrow, pick a point, pick the next point, pick as many more points as I want, and when I hit enter, I'm done. I'm going to hit enter to repeat the command. I can pick a point, turn my ortho on and go straight, enter to get out, enter to get back in again, go straight, enter. So this arrow can be just an arrowhead, and it can be as short as you want, but the arrow is just an arrowhead, or you can keep picking if you want. Okay, now I'm going to make another command out of that. I'm going to leave it inside the same file, but I'm going to copy the arrow program, go down a couple lines and paste it in again, and call this fat arrow or Pharaoh. My fat arrow, instead of doing an arrow length divided by 3 for the width, I'm just going to do arrow length as the width for the arrow. And define a command Pharaoh. It's all the same except for a little bit difference on the width. Save this. Now the file I need to load is arrow. It defined arrow and Pharaoh. So arrow, pick, Pharaoh, fat arrow, pick. So sometimes in flowcharts, they'll use a fat arrow. So I'm just calling it a fat arrow or Pharaoh. Okay, so we got our arrow, we got our Pharaoh. I'm going to make a third one. A friend of mine asked for a splined arrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that code again. So I'm going to go back. Well, I already have it on the clipboard, so I can probably just go down a little bit and paste. And instead of a arrow or a Pharaoh, I'm going to call it S arrow for spline arrow. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to add another point in here, P temp. Okay. So we got the arrow length. I'm going to say set quantity P temp to be polar from 0.1 at the angle of point 1 to point 2 for arrow length. Close off the set quantity. So the polyline starts at P1 with 0. This whole thing is now point temp with 0, and I'm going to add an enter. And what that's going to do is kick out of the arrow or the polyline command. And now I'm going to do command spline from point 1 through point temp, and loop on the point 2 again. Let's save this. See if Arrow will load now. It does. Spline Arrow. Pick a starting point. Pick an angle. Pick looks like I need a couple more enters to kick out of it because it was still in the command when I exited it. Okay, so let's go back into the code. Command enter, enter, enter. Save. Load arrow, S-A-R-R-O-W, spline arrow. Enter. Can't really see it as you draw it, but it's doing it. All right. I'm tickled. All right. Have a good one. Bye.